Hello, welcome. Since the new year is nigh, I thought now would be the perfect time to go through my favourite wrestling matches of the year and talk about them a bit. Of course, it's a very broad topic, and since the spreadsheet that I keep to record the matches that I love has over 60 entries just for this year, I decided that I would set some ground rules. So, rule number 1, I can only pick one match per month. This will be a list of 12 rather than a list of 60 plus, which just makes things easier. Rule number 2 is not a rule. I included it, but it's not a rule whatsoever, because rule number 2 can be from any promotion, which is the opposite of a rule which I meant to restrict. But there you go, just to put it out there that that's what we're doing, can be from any promotion. But having said that, let's be honest, it's mainly going to be AEW, Ring of Honor. Those are the shows that I watch the most. AEW in particular, I have a backlog of Ring of Honor to watch. I stopped watching in July. I need to catch up. But I am hoping to branch out in the new year. So hopefully if I do this list next year, which I am hoping to do, I will have a bit more variety. A few more promotions that we could talk about. But speaking of variety, rule number 3, one match per wrestler. So if they participated in a match on this list, they cannot appear again. There are some caveats to this, which I will explain. I'm choosing to treat tag teams and singles wrestlers as separate entities. So, for example, if I had Private Party on the list, I could have a singles match from Isaiah Cassidy on the list because they go under different names, so they're separate. Whereas I couldn't have a Will Ospreay singles match and then a Will Ospreay tag match because they, like, when he tagged with Fletcher, when he tagged with Orange Cassidy, he wasn't under a tag team name, he was still wrestling as Will Ospreay. I decided to include this rule specifically to weed out obvious favouritism for my special little guys, because otherwise, let's be honest, we'd be talking about 12 months worth of the Beast Mortos matches. However, at the end of the video, I will include a tally of who appeared most overall on the spreadsheet. So if your curiosity is piqued about who appears the most, we'll get to that at the end. And last rule, probably the most controversial one out of this list, no pay-per-view matches, including 0 hour. No pay-per-views, nothing. It might seem weird, but I really wanted to highlight great matches that people might have forgotten about already, because pay-per-view matches, they get an appropriate amount of praise a lot of the time, and it's really easy to call out the pay-per-view big hitters, while the people shining week to week on TV are just quietly putting on bangers that people might not remember in a day or two. And they deserve praise for what they do, so we're going to praise them for what they do. And because of this rule, I'll also be including a tally at the end for how many matches from each show made it onto the spreadsheet of things that I love. It will be a vague top 5-ish situation. I'm not going to go through every single pay-per-view and how many matches got written down, because that's going to take forever. And now we have the rules out of the way, let's just get cracking with the fun stuff. January! Look, I know I just said that this list is for underrated bangers, and I'm starting off with a match that people to this day are still talking about, thus betraying the entire premise. But it would have been incredibly disingenuous of me to put any other match in this spot, because as someone who doesn't tend to re-watch wrestling matches after I've seen them once, I watched this match about 6 times in the week after it happened, because it's just so goddamn good. It's Konosuke Takeshita versus Darby Allin from the first AEW Dynamite of 2024. I have been a big fan of Darby ever since I started watching AEW in the summer of last year. But this match, this is the match, this is the moment that really cemented that Takeshita was one of my guys. Truly, even if this match ended after the first 4 minutes, it would have still been one of the best matches of the year, pay-per-views included. This match is just incredible. From Takeshita just throwing Darby like a ragdoll, sniping him out of the air with that incredible knee strike, using Darby's body to break the count, which I don't know if I've seen before, and then the rolling German suplexes down the ramp. It was just insane. It was just truly insane. And a lot of people I know will say that Darby's best match of the year was against Will Ospreay in the Continental Classic, but I personally think it's this one, and this could have being the only match that I picked for January. It's just 13 minutes of absolute perfection. If you haven't seen it yet, if you're a newer viewer to AEW, I implore you to go watch it. Or even if you've seen it before, go watch it again. Because I promise you it's probably even better than you imagine it to be. Which is so rare when it comes to wrestling matches. So often you'll have a match in your head that you think was amazing, and then you watch it back and you're like, oh, it wasn't quite as good. This one's better, in my opinion, than what you remember. And because of that, and just generally because this is a list and people might want to watch these things, I'm going to include a list of all of the matches, the episodes they appeared on, and the timestamps they appear, all in the description of the video to make everything easier if you want to find and watch anything on this list. And you should. There's some really, really good stuff on this list, if I do say so myself. February! Okay, on to February, and already picking something that might seem odd or even controversial. After all, this is the month that Bryan Danielson wrestled Hechicero, which, you know, insanely good. And I haven't picked that. I've picked Ethan Page versus Slim J from episode 49 of Ring of Honor TV. Look, AEW is incredible. I haven't been disappointed with a single pay-per-view since I started watching. I even liked Well Said last year. Their goal to highlight in-ring ability by putting on big matches, chock full of dramatic story beats and in-ring psychology in 15 to 20 minutes of like non-stop action. It's fantastic. But sometimes all you need is for someone to make the referee slap their opponent and then do some of the coolest moves you have never seen before or since, and then wrap the whole thing up in 7 minutes. Not everything needs to be a big drama. Ethan Page is obviously a star. We all know this, and it was no secret that they wanted him to be one of Ring of Honor's top guys, and this match was all about making that very clear. But Slim J, man, like Slim fucking J. I wasn't a fan of the Trustbusters gimmick from the brief times that I saw them, which wasn't that much, I'll be honest. But no one can deny that Slim J is a sensation in the ring, full of that like cheeky little shit energy that makes you immediately root for the other guy, which is great since that was the job he was being paid to do in this match. From grabbing referee Rick Knox's hand and making him slap Ethan Page to just generally being a fast-moving nuisance. He's so much fun to watch, and I'm really very sad that we'll never get to see whether or not he could have flourished under another gimmick since he was released from his contract only 2 months after this match. Which is such a shame, because he's so, so good. Match! I'll be honest, I wrote a whole spiel about an entirely different match, but at the end of that match, I was reminded of another one that might be worth revisiting with fresher eyes, and I revisited it, and now I'm going to talk about that one instead, because I think it's great. So initially, this entry was going to be about Young Bucks versus Private Pie as part of the tag team tournament. Young Bucks and Private Pie are incredible. They have so much in-ring chemistry and just generally put out banger after banger. But then I remembered that House of Black faced off against the Infantry as part of the same tournament in the wildcard thing on Collision. And two things to note right from the start. I'm a fan of the Infantry. I'm a fan of Brody King. Maybe those things swayed me slightly, but probably not that much because I'm also a fan of the Young Bucks and Private Pie. But I just adore the structure of this match. It's a much slower pace than I'm normally into. Like, my preferred matches are short, but with every dial turned up to 11. But House of Black in this match do a really great job of staying in charge of the pace to suit their needs, with, like, quick pace to start off to attack their opponents on the outside of the ring and inflict maximum damage before the bell has even rung and the match has even begun. And then a much slower pace when they're in the ring and they're toying with their suitably softened up prey. Buddy Matthews and Brody King are absolute beasts, and every moment and every movement feels meticulous and targeted. Like, these guys are calculated predators. And contrasted with the Infantry, who have been given an opportunity not normally afforded to Ring of Honor talent, the chance to challenge for an AEW belt, and they're going to take every second of punishment if it means even a sliver of hope to prove that they deserve their spot. Carly Bravo is insanely charismatic. I don't really know how else to describe it. He takes the punishment like a fucking champ. kind of reminiscent of like how Daniel Garcia would take punishment in his matches that led him to becoming one of AEW's top baby faces. And maybe not strictly about this match, but like a general comment about why I like the Infantry so much. Captain Sean Dean is like obviously a wrestling veteran and very important figure in AEW for his work outside the ring as well as inside. But it always feels like he gives the best and most compelling spots to Carly Bravo. Like, sure, Captain Sean Dean did get the pin in this match, but it was the endless beatdowns, including the pile driver on the commentary desk to Carly Bravo, that made the pin mean something, especially when the pin only happened after Mark Briscoe hit Buddy Matthews with a chair. I'm not against a fun little interference ending every now and again, and it was done in a way which felt much more grounded than most interference endings, where they're a bit cheesy or unbelievable. And it's a great match, especially if you want to watch some big dudes beat the piss out of some smaller dudes. And just really shout out to Sean Dean and Kylie Bravo. I think they're just an incredible team, and they work so well together. April! I teased that there'd be a Beast Mortos match on this list, and here we are on episode 61 of Ring of Honor TV, the main event between the Beast Mortos, AR Fox, and Blake Christian. And I would also be remiss not to mention that AR Fox and Blake Christian are also two of my special guys, so there's probably some extra bias, maybe, that I chose to include this match for the month. But I do really think that it stands up on its own. One of the things I love about Ring of Honor TV over AEW programming is that they're not afraid to have a random bunch of lads wrestling in the main event of the show, simply because Tony Khan knows it's going to be an incredible match. The Four Corner survival matches they put on pretty regularly as a format is something I really wish AEW would adopt. And this is very much the definition of a bunch of lads match. One of my favourite tropes in these kinds of matches is people pairing off to take down one, usually much larger opponent. It's a fun concept to see strangers pairing up and synchronising moves, and this match starts off exactly like that, with AR Fox and Blake Christian both attempting and failing to shoulder tackle the Beast Mortos to the mat before attempting to do it together. They still weren't successful, but at least they tried as a team. But the thing that makes this even better than the trope in this match is because Blake Christian is a little shit. And I mean that with all the affection in the world, because he's so good at it. Blake can't even pretend to work with AR Fox for 2 minutes before he's breaking their truce and tripping him over and kicking him in the face. Like, this match does everything that it needs to do and functions incredibly well. It shows that Beast Mortos is a force to be reckoned with, that AR Fox is fast-moving and resilient and impossible to count out of any match, and that Blake Christian is smart but ultimately an untrustworthy opportunist. And it does all of that in a highly entertaining sub-7-minute match. What more could you possibly ask for? Meh! We're sticking with Ring of Honor for May as well, because episode 64 of ROH TV features a very, very fun bout between Dark Order and Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh. And I'll be the first one to admit I've never been a huge fan of Double J and his crew, but this year I found myself warming up to them a lot more. And if you haven't watched Karen Jarrett's episode of AEW, you should check it out because it's absolutely delightful. And this match feels like the perfect showcase of why these people deserve to take up space on these wrestling shows. People don't tend to put comedy matches on their best of lists when it comes to wrestling, but they absolutely deserve to be talked about and praised for what they are, which is entertaining as hell. And not only is it entertaining, but these are guys who can really throw down when it's asked of them. It's not like these are people who cannot wrestle and so hide it with comedy. So it started out with comedy during the Code of Honor handshake, but then choosing to start the match with Evil Uno and Jay Lethal doing some honest to goodness wrestling was a great choice to balance this whole thing out and stop this match from feeling like one big joke. And then the jokes kept coming and they don't stop coming. I mean, there was some wrestling in as well. But then to immediately follow that up with John Silver tagging in and saying that he wanted to wrestle Satnam, while Uno is begging him not to, and Jay is laughing at the stupidity of it. It's just so perfect. It's just perfect. I don't understand how anyone can dislike the Dark Order. If you dislike the Dark Order, I feel like you just hate fun, and they're a real gem, and comedy should always have a place and be celebrated in wrestling. And I'm really glad that it seems like Dark Order are really carving out a place for themselves within Ring of Honor. And I'm hoping that one day they're going to come back to AEW TV and win the trios. But, like, none of this is to even take away from Jay Lethal and Satnam Singh's part in making this match so much fun. Like, they know how to strike that perfect balance between fun and serious in making Satnam look like an indestructible force and Jay like a highly skilled professional. It's just great. And the match is less than 5 minutes long, so you could watch the whole thing while waiting for the kettle to boil and making yourself a cup of tea. So what's not to love about that? All matches don't have to be 30-minute classics. Sometimes 5 minutes is all you need. June! It's no secret. I never try to keep it a secret. I love MJF and I love Roosh, so June's entry could only be MJF versus Roosh on June 19th episode of AEW Dynamite. And if I'm being completely honest, I normally find that when a match features two of my favourites, it never lives up to my expectations. But this one far surpasses it, what I could have even, like, ever imagined it would be. Like the crowd is so white hot from this match, which probably has a lot to do with the fact that this was MJF's first match back in 6 months since he lost the men's world title at World's End 2023. But the level of pure aggression that Roosh brings to every match, but especially this one, makes him so unbelievably captivating to watch. Like, it's a level of consistent aggression that's weirdly rare to find in wrestling of all things. Like, he's just so unbelievably unrelenting. And so was this match. There were chops and a gnarly headbutt. There was blood and bumps on the floor. There was whipping and choking, which is only mildly kinkier than it sounds. It's a match so good that I truly believe it wouldn't have been out of place on an AEW pay-per-view. And I think if it had been, people would have spent a lot more time talking about how sick it was. And deservedly so, because it fucking rules. July! We're sticking with AEW Dynamite for July in what is, unfortunately, only one of two women's matches on this list. AEW and Ring of Honor have been absolutely tearing it up in the women's division, and it's been incredible to see. However, when there's 4 men's matches for every 1 women's match, the odds are heavily skewed that the men will be the ones to have the best match every month. It's not a comment on the incredible talent and skill in either division. It's just basic maths. And it sucks. We deserve more women's matches on TV. It should be a 50-50 balance. I will die on this hill. Give us more women's matches. With all that being said, it's Willow Nightingale versus Kris Statlander on the Beach Break episode of AEW Dynamite. Starting out with a brawl on the match and Willow pouncing Kris all the way down the ramp to the ring, then repeatedly slamming her head into the ring apron, was such an incredible way to start a match. Like, sometimes women's matches can lack the aggression and intensity of a lot of the men's matches, but the backdrop of this particular match, both being for the opportunity to challenge for the women's world title at All In, as well as the personal issues that they were going through with one another, really lend themselves to an aggressive and hard-hitting match. Like, the AEW women's division has an insane amount of talent to pull from any given week, but Kris Statlander and Willow Nightingale are truly 2 of the best. And this wasn't even the best match of this year, but because of the rules I set out at the start of this, their street match at All Out couldn't be included on this list. But if you haven't seen it, you should check that one out as well. These 2 are incredible, like, both individually and together, and I really hope that they reunite and go on an absolute tear as a tag team if Tony Khan isn't planning a singles title reign for either of them anytime soon. Let's just watch them murder some other women. August. I'll be honest, I hadn't seen Ricochet wrestle until his debut at All In, and his debut singles match on AEW Dynamite less than a week later instantly made me a fan of his. As I hinted at earlier, I would much rather a short-paced match than a 20-minute match that dips in the middle when the pace slows down a bit too much. But what I've found is one of the great things about Ricochet, he doesn't really have a slow down button. He's either moving insanely fast or he's knocked out on the mat. There's no in between. And Kyle Fletcher, I mean, that guy's something special. I think we all know this. His full transformation into a bad guy was phenomenally executed, and his follow through ever since has been like a true gift to behold. Not just from a promo point of view, but also just his shift in wrestling style to being more hard-hitting and punishing. And this match happened not long before his full heel turn at Wrestle Dream, and you can already see the shift in his wrestling technique, which lends itself incredibly well for fighting someone like Ricochet with the high-flying action. Sometimes I find, as much as I love flippy shit, it's my favourite wrestling style, it can feel like none of the moves really mean anything, because they always immediately get back up and move on to the next one. So having Kyle counter with like kicks and high knees and chops really makes the match feel like they're fighting rather than dancing. And it really felt like Ricochet had to earn his first big singles win, which is a testament to both of these opponents. Because sometimes a wrestler's debut singles match can be against someone who's too low down on the card, where it feels like an easy win to ease the new guy in. But this was anything but that. And it's really a celebration of both of them, that they didn't hold back and that they didn't make Kyle weaker to make Ricochet look even better than he is. That they both just went for it and put on an absolute banger. September! It's September and it's Roderick Strong versus Beef. This one truly took me by surprise because, like a lot of people on the internet, I kind of expected it to be a squash match when they were coming out to the ring. I hadn't been watching Ring of Honor at this time, so I was completely unfamiliar with Beef. Though, because I'm not a fucking idiot, I could pick up on some context clues, like the fact he was accompanied by a very familiar face in Anthony Henry, and that the commentators knew who he was and had actual information about him. And, you know, he was wearing a Ring of Honor shirt. So I was quickly able to discern why it wasn't a straight up squash match, something which was apparently too fucking difficult for some people on Twitter. Beef isn't a jobber, he's a Ring of Honor talent. So of course Tony Khan wants to give him a proper showing and not just have Roderick Strong decimate him the way that Roderick Strong has done many a time with enhancement talent. Anyway, with that small rant out of the way, we'll talk about the match, which appeared on the September 13th episode of Rampage. Now, I love a chunky wrestler, it has to be said. That's not a secret about me, and Beef very quickly jumped up that list to become one of my favourites. He's just so blooming charismatic. There's one thing I've not really spoken about in any of the other matches before, and it's how much the commentary team can make a match so much better. And there's one thing that makes this match feel so much more special, and it's Daddy Magic's pure delight at Beef, who he's clearly never seen or heard about before, but instantly loves. From his excitement just seeing him to his delighted exasperation at hearing what Beef's wrestling moves are called. There's just something so pure and happy about that. And you don't get that enough, I don't think, in wrestling. And that, alongside the hard-hitting action from both Roderick and Beef, and then Matt Taven and Mike Bennett being lovable goofballs on the outside of the ring, it all combines to make something that actually feels a little bit magical. Like, I know that sounds weird to say, but it really feels like this match shouldn't be as good as it is. But every piece of the puzzle fit together so perfectly that it made it feel like this wonderful hidden gem of a match. I mean, it's a shame there's a short ad break midway through, but you can't have everything, and we pretty much get everything in this match. October! We're going a bit off-piste for October because this is not an AEW or Ring of Honor show. This is a match from the main event of Mystery Wrestling 11. It's a ladder match between Cowboy Psycho Mike and Swoggle. If you don't watch Mystery Wrestling, Psycho Mike has been on quite a journey. From being diagnosed by a doctor as clinically a piece of shit, to seeking a second opinion and being informed that he is a cowboy piece of shit, to fighting several matches to try and win a cure for being a piece of shit. This is one more match where Mike is desperately fighting for his cure against newcomer to Mystery Wrestling and guest star Swoggle, whose own motivations to win the cure are just in case he's also a piece of shit and just hasn't got the official diagnosis yet. I have already made my feelings known when it comes to comedy in wrestling. I love it. It deserves its flowers. If wrestling makes you truly feel something, then it's done its job. And joy is just as powerful as sorrow. And if I were to pick one word to describe this match, it would be joyful. From the smallest ladders you've ever seen, to 2 broken doors, to working the hard cam, to Cowboy Psycho Mike's ridiculous selling. Everything in this match is designed to make you smile, and it absolutely succeeds in that. Mystery Wrestling is absolutely delightful, and it's a true privilege that we have a wrestling show like it, that one that values comedy and feels like a real love letter to comedy wrestling, that also contains genuine great talent and great matches among the comedy and within the comedy and around the comedy. And you should absolutely check it out if you get the opportunity to. They live stream on Twitch the wrestling shows. Go on to Evil Uno's social media and you'll find out when the next shows are. And then you can sign up to Patreon and watch the entire back catalogue of this, which I did this month. And I am going to very much be using that month to catch up on the shows that I have not seen yet. November! Now, I know what you're going to say. I set rules in place specifically to help me with having more variety on my list. But they're operating under a different name, so it's technically allowed, okay? It's the Acclaimed versus LFI on the November 16th episode of AEW Collision. And LFI in this instance is made up of Roosh and the Beast Mortos, both of whom I know have already appeared on this list. But have you considered, even for a second, that they're great and they deserve it? Because I have, and they do. So that's how this is going to work. Sometimes wrestling matches can feel a bit formulaic, especially tag matches, but I've always really loved the formula that the Acclaimed tag matches follow. Max Caster takes an insane beating for several minutes and then he hot tags to Anthony Bowens, who beats everyone up. You can say what you want about Max Caster, whether you love him or more likely hate him, but he makes Anthony Bowens look like an absolute star. And similarly to what I said about Captain Shordine and the Infantry earlier, I do think this needs to be recognised as a sign of a true team player, even if all that goodwill goes out the window the moment he tweets about anything, or is handed a live mic. Roosh hits all the beats that he needs to, from the Tranquilo pose, to the mess with the ball you get the horns fake out, to whipping Max with the green camera cable. And the Beast Mortos is just awesome, as always. He's the Beast Mortos. Rawr. He's great. This is a fairly standard and predictable match, but I feel like those matches can also be great. Like a band only playing the greatest hits at a concert. Sometimes it's all you need and nothing that you don't. And the subtle fracturing of the teamwork between Max and Anthony is just spicy enough to give a bit more dimension to the match than normal. December! You may have worked out that earlier I said there were 2 women's matches on this list, and so far I've only talked about one. And you're absolutely right, because December is Mercedes Moné versus Anna Jay on the Holiday Bash episode of AEW Dynamite. Now, I know what some people are thinking. December is Continental Classic month, and you'd absolutely expect one of those matches to be on this list. And also, there hasn't been a single Will Ospreay match on this list. Shocking, I know. But those things didn't make it onto this list, because this one did. While watching this match, I was really struck by a comment that my mum made when we were watching wrestling earlier in the year, when she turned to me and said, "The women seem to do a lot more actual wrestling than the men." And it was this match where I realised that, you know what, she's absolutely right. And unfortunately, my theory isn't a very positive one, because I really feel like it stems from the fact that women are just not given enough time. Not enough time for shenanigans or slowing down the pace or peacocking, because they need to get in all of their moves. And then their allotted time is over. Then the match needs to end so the boys can get all the time they need for unnecessary hijinks that they have planned. And in a lot of ways, that is supremely annoying and frustrating and unfair. But in other ways, that condensing of matches can lead to some bangers that have all the fat trimmed off. And I think this is a prime example of that. Mercedes loves hijinks, that's no secret, but getting to watch her just wrestle, not much time spent mocking or winding her opponent up, just pure in-ring skill. It's impossible not to recognise why people label her as the best women's wrestler of her generation. Possibly one of the best wrestlers of her generation, regardless of gender. Let's be honest. And Anna Jay has put so much work into improving that she can very convincingly hold her own against both the AEW Women's World Champion and the TBS Champion. And she did both at the back half of this year. And it really feels like she belongs in the ring with both of them. This match is incredible and it more than deserves this spot on the list. And if you think it should be a Continental Classic match instead, then you can just go suck an egg, because this match is better. And with all that being done, those were my picks of my favourite matches from each month, and it's time to do a bit of a breakdown on who appears the most and which shows appeared the most on my wrestling spreadsheet this year. So this was initially going to be a standard top 5/top 10 situation, but it turns out there are too many ties in the wrestler category, so we'll start with the top 5 shows and then we will see what I end up doing with the wrestlers. Number 5, AEW All Out, which is particularly impressive given that 5 matches from the show made it to my list of favourites. 5. Like, that's crazy to say that a pay-per-view could have that many matches that aren't just good, but fucking outstanding. Like, that's insane. It is. Number 4 is AEW Collision with 6 matches, which is pretty good. I feel like they were probably a lot more than that. I need to do a better job of paying attention to shows and then writing down matches immediately. I'm going to work on being better at that in the new year. In joint second, we have Rampage and Ring of Honor TV, both with 7 matches. A very, very admirable showing from both, but especially from Ring of Honor, because I've only watched up until July's programming, so who knows, maybe that would have taken top spot and kicked Rampage down if I'd have been watching it for longer. And number 1, no surprises, AEW Dynamite with 16 matches, more than double the matches from the shows in second. I'm very much looking forward to what AEW Dynamite brings us next year, because I think it's going to be an absolute stellar year for AEW. Now on to the wrestlers. This is either a top 7 or a top 3, depending on your definition. It's 7 wrestlers, but there's a 2-way tie for second and a 4-way tie for third. So let's start with third. In third place, we have Ricochet, Roderick Strong, Dark Order, and the Beast Mortos, all with 4 entries. It's very interesting to see it broken down like this, because I wouldn't even say that I'm a fan of Roderick Strong. So to see him surpass people who I would consider my actual favourites, like, spoiler alert, Willow Nightingale, who didn't make it to the list, and tying with my other favourites like Beast Mortos, is really fascinating. Maybe I need to accept my calling and become a Roderick Strong fangirl in the new year. I think that's probably going to end up happening, I feel. And Ricochet being this high on the list when I've only seen him wrestle for the past 4 months is ridiculously impressive. Like, he would absolutely probably have cause to be number 1 on this list if he'd have been in AEW for longer. In joint second, we have Konosuke Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher with 5 matches each. This feels more on form for me, I'll be honest. 2 of my favourites, exactly where they belong. And I am ridiculously excited to see what they achieve next year, because they just keep getting better and better. And I think that Tony Khan and AEW really have faith in these guys, and I think they're going to go so far. And I want to see it. I want to see what he's got planned. And number 1, which is probably no surprise to anyone, is Will Ospreay with 8 matches. I have to say, the contrarian that I am, I wanted so badly for my number 1 to be anyone but Ospreay, but it turns out you just can't deny greatness. He's been putting on banger after banger, and he deserves the top spot. It did kind of surprise me that he was that far in the lead, 3 whole matches ahead of second place, but sometimes you're just great and there's nothing more to say about that. So those are my favourite matches of the year. Next year I'm actually going to try and make this a monthly feature on the channel, my matches of the month or something. But we will see how far I get with that. I would be very interested to know what other people's favourite matches of this year were, so leave a comment or you can talk to me on Blue Sky. I don't use Twitter anymore. Links for that will be down below probably. So, with that said, this list is over and I will see you in the new year.